I'm going to say something that's pretty mean. I think Brooke van Velden is completely out of her depth. If I was of my parents' generation, I would say she has risen above her position. Because I'm going to play you some of the conversation from this morning. And in fact, I think I read something, it might have even been from Chris Trotter. In fact, I'll read this to you as well. I won't put it up on the screen because it's in my other emails. I haven't got this one, but Brooke van Velden was on Q&A this week as well. And Jack Tame asked the question, are income tax right now in the best interest of lowering inflation? This is the paragraph. This is from Chris Trotter. And, we've got our issues with Chris Trotter. But, it says this. If looks could kill, then Tame would have died right there and then. Van Velden is a very intelligent woman. So in the very few seconds she had to formulate a response to Tame's question, she assessed the consequences of providing him with an honest answer, realised that in this case honesty would be absolutely the worst policy, and so summoning her most earnest tone, and that's what I want to talk about, her tone of voice, and with only the thinnest hint of embarrassment, she replied in the affirmative. I think Brooke van Velden is way out of her depth. This conversation I'm about to show you parts of with Chloe from this morning, she mixes from she sounds like a teenager or a student, let's give her credit, a 20-year-old who is playing at being a politician. Like those were, I know the script says these are the words I use, and she flips from that into a 1950s female. Like you think of the 50s mom, that kind of stuff. It's just, everything's just so wonderful. Aren't we just so very, very proud? And it really, I think it's concerning, because this particular politician has a lot of influence and power in this current government from her position. So let's get into it. The first part of the conversation is that I've actually left out the question altogether. They come back to it, but they are talking about the English standard tests. And the question has already been asked. I'm not playing the question. I'm not even playing all of the answer, because I want to just give you an example of the tone, the way she's speaking. And it's not just that she has a style, it's that I think it feels like she's grasping for the words. And I think it feels like she talks about Erica Stanford's policies, and you can hear it's like almost, I haven't done the work here, I haven't read it, I don't really know. And because she's not over it herself, she doesn't seem to have the capacity to answer in any sort of, I'll say it, any sort of intelligent way, just fumbles and stumbles and feels like she's out of her depth. So let's have a look at this conversation from this morning.
I know Minister Stanford will be looking at further immigration changes in the future, but I can't make any discussion here on her behalf on those matters. But if you look at what we need to do in the short term, we do have a problem in front of us. I know that there have been lots of stories of migrant exploitation. We're seeing it in the numbers as well. And we do have to act on it. That's why we're implementing more of those minimum English language tests to make sure that we have people coming into the country who have the right skills, they have the ability to do the jobs that they're being employed to do. And we know through some of the cases... Again,
if they've been employed to pick fruit, those are the skills they need in there is to do this, and do that. That's the level of skill. So that's why it screams to me of xenophobia. But look, this has got a bit of a way to go, Chewy. But if you want to comment on anything I've just said, or the example I just gave quickly of the tone and stuff, you're more than welcome, of course.
I'm going to hold fire until the end.
Okay, fair enough. Here we go.
Is coming through that's not been the case.
If I can just point out as well that we've had successive governments, both those led of red and blue stripes, that have consistently pumped up the numbers of migrants coming into the country in order to enable them to uphold the economy as we presently understand it, but they're not really looking after them when they get here. So one of the other concerning things in the announcement this past weekend from Minister Stanford is the reduction in continuous years that migrants, I believe, at level 4 and level 5 can stay in the country for. We should in fact be ensuring that migrants have a pathway to residency so that they can put down roots, build lives in their communities and contribute as New Zealanders. Whereas in fact, part of this announcement continues to contribute to that revolving door, which actually makes all of us poorer.
Is it a revolving door, Brooke?
I just want to acknowledge the Queen. You know that. Talking, and now I know that Chloe's been around for longer than Brooke doing this, so I'm not going to compare them both, but that's someone who's young and so age is no, I guess I'm saying age is no barrier. because there's a brilliant answer there, well spoken, well researched, knows what she's doing, filing it on. And then we get back to Brooke and her mix of playing politician and 1950s housewife.
I don't think it's a revolving door at all. I think what we need to make really, really clear is that New Zealand is a country that accepts migrants. We are a beautiful, multicultural, ethnic environment from all walks of life. And I think that's really, really wonderful. But what we've got to make sure...
Did you hear the 50s housewife, just quietly? That bit there? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Is that we're getting people joining our beautiful country here who have the skills to do the jobs that are needed in our country, not people who are not necessarily matched to the job market with the skills that are needed.
Bizarre rhetoric, which seems a little bit devoid from kind of the policy settings and reality there. And again, we would just make it really abundantly clear that if you want to do the single biggest thing that would reduce migrant exploitation in this country, then we need to decouple work visas from single employers so that workers have that bargaining power.
Okay, there you go. Clip number one. Chewy, you wanted to hold fire? Load them up, fire away.
I think that there are a lot of things that need to change with our immigration migrant settings and that sort of thing. I think there's been so many cases of people being taken advantage of that there is something very, very wrong. I heard on Radio New Zealand late last week that currently, as it stands at the moment, visa applications, and I think primarily student and work visa applications, from one part of the world, 60% of them are getting rejected. And right. That is because of a combination of we don't believe you and we don't trust the agent that is putting in this application for you. And I think with a lot of this, when they look at the people that are coming here on work visas and stuff like that, there's always been that you know, the employee, you have to have a job. You have to be coming here to do a job. You have to be sponsored by the employer. And in effect, you're kind of bonded to that employer, that one single employer, as Chloe was referencing there. Yeah. And it's not working as intended, because it takes all of the power away from that worker. They can't point out unsafe work practices. They can't point out that they're being underpaid and taken advantage of, because if they do stick their neck up and go, hey, this isn't right, well, cool, good job, fuck off.
Yeah.
You know, they can't go anywhere else. So I think a lot of this needs to be looked at from the worker's point of view, from the person that wants to come to this country. Do I believe that ACT New Zealand First and National will do that? No, I don't. No. They'll look at it from a business point of view. And I think, you know, there is a human in that machine that needs to be looked after. I think I don't like what I'm about to say, but I think there is an argument for having some language levels in there. And again, I'm coming at this from a different point of view.
But in saying that, do you think that's what they're saying? Or do you think that they're just dog whistling to their people about bloody migrants who can't speak our language?
Yeah. I do. But to flip that on its head, you come to a primarily English speaking country and you don't have those language skills. That takes away a lot of tools.
It does also depend, though, what you're doing, because at the moment, if you are kind of bound to that one employer, let's just say that one employer is a Filipino builder, right? Let's just say that's what it is. And you're a Filipino builder from the Philippines, and you're then bonded to that Filipino builder who speaks Philippine? Not sure the name of the language. And how does that mean that they're not going to be able to function? If they're working for someone in this country speaking primarily a language that their native language, but it's working with their employer, who cares?
Yeah, but they have to interact with, you know, like if they needed help, how would they reach out?
Yeah,
you know, those sort of things. Like I'm saying that I don't agree that this government is thinking it that way. I think there is merit in what they're saying, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
You know, I
hear you.
think
It's a bit like my
again,
vibes today about saying that some things that the Free Speech Union say I kind of agree with, but for very different reasons. So I get you. I'm with you.
Very, very different.
Very different. Very different.
I'm coming at it from a worker point of view of like,
Yeah.
how can we make sure that these people that are coming here to do these jobs aren't taken advantage of?
Yeah.
And
No,
we've
no,
seen
that's
so much of that, and like since COVID and that sort of thing, of people being taken advantages for bonded jobs, being underpaid, overworked, crammed into social housing, feeling like if they stick their neck up and say, "Hey, look, I need help," then they're going to be deported straight away.
Yeah.
I think there are things to consider there. Do I trust Brooke to be able to do that? No.
Well, that's the other thing. Do we really buy the idea that ACT is the party to protect migrant workers from being abused? Like, do we really buy that? I mean, this is the thing, right? Why? So therefore, if we don't buy that, why are they doing it? It's because they want to keep going down that path of English first and show their supporters and their funders that they're not going to have that weird language. I'm not going to hear that in my supermarket anymore. That weird jumping and jiving. You know, that's what it's about. That's what it's about altogether.
I think there's just often turning on the taps for immigration, or turning them off in this case. It is short-term thinking. It is showing a lack of planning. A lot of people would call that social engineering or something like that, but it's like the whole idea of bringing in a migrant worker. One of the yardsticks that they need to climb over is this a job that a Kiwi can do?
Yeah.
And you know, that doesn't seem to be a barrier at all. And we look at fruit pickers and the RSA workers and that sort of thing. I want more protections for those guys, but I would agree in that case, that RSE visa, I don't think it really matters in their case whether they have perfect King's English. But again, they need the ability, or they need to have the support to say, hey, look, if you're being taken advantage of, we've got you because you've come here to do a job for us.
Yeah. No, and look, I think the point you just made about protections for the worker, because Chewy, you're a Marxist, is actually, I get it, I'm with you on that. What do you think, what is your vibe about what I said about, and I don't want to say the performance of Brooke, but out of her depth, this person who doesn't really seem to know what they're doing or what they're saying? Chris Trotter's kind of made it fairly obvious in his point as well. What do you think?
Oh, please don't bring up Chris Trotter again.
Yeah, I know.
That man has been eating lead-based paint chips like potato chips for decades. I think it's great that it's Chloe and Brooke there together, because it just shows, like there was a comment in the chat there that Chloe's face just looked like she was waiting for it, like a mother waiting for a child to stop having a tantrum in the supermarket. So you can put it back on track. I think there is a perfect contrast. You've got two young women in politics, one of whom is just so far across anything that she's asked to speak on. Every time that there's a comment, it's incredibly information dense, it's incredibly well put forward, that sort of thing. And then you have Brooke. And Brooke's hitting the bullet points, but they always feel empty. It always feels like there's nothing behind them, that she doesn't have the depth of knowledge into what she's there to speak on.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That could be an experience.
Yeah, and that, but that's what. But
Chloe's been in there for years now.
Yeah, but that's no excuse. If you've been given a ministerial role and you're inexperienced, and
sure.
that's on the leaders of these parties. If you've been given it too soon, that's on them. If you're a minister, then you got to stump up like all other ministers would. Mm-hmm. If Chloe was the minister, she wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, you've got to do the work.
Yeah, and look, I see in here as well. I got back from Queenstown mid-afternoon today, so I didn't have a chance to watch Q&A in its entirety. But yeah, I will have a good look at that interview tomorrow, and maybe we'll do it tomorrow night, even though it'll be a day later than usual. But look, let's also keep going on this, because there is more joy for us to be had, because this is the second part of the conversation, and they were talking about gang patches. Now, as I said at the start, I didn't hear anything about the news this weekend. I didn't know there'd been a shooting at a rugby game. It seems that what I've read of it now, it is something that was a localized sort of something between individuals that knew each other. Now, I'm not playing this part of it for you for expedience, but Chloe has just spent the 60 seconds before this part of the conversation like the left always needs to do, to prostrate itself before people and going, they're very bad, it's very bad. We don't condone. The right never has to do that. The right just go at it, but the left has to go, yes, of course we don't condone, we don't do. So she's just done that. She's just gone through saying, bad guns bad, shooting bad, no, don't condone. And then we get into the substance of the rest of the conversation around what's happening.
So moving on then to policy settings, this is where I get a little bit concerned about how political rhetoric will just take us to the space of being tough on crime, tough on gangs, but actually very light on evidence. So we have a lot of evidence in this country, including from the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor and from the inquiry, the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse in State Care, which tell us where gangs come from. And they tell us, again, that if we want to reduce people getting involved in gang lifestyles, then we need to reduce poverty. We need to reduce inequality. We need to give young people pathways to get involved in society and fix the social contract.
Brooke, I'll come to you. I mean, surely we...
If you're a lecturer at university or something, you'd probably go, I have no notes. I have no notes for that answer. Perfect. Great. Spot on. Cited research. Explained it as well. This is the thing as well. The government, and we're not really going to get to it tonight, but there was a story on One News tonight about the targets the government's setting out. And one of the targets the government's setting out is there are currently 1,100 young offenders known to police. Those people who commit most of the crimes are 1,100 young offenders, right? Now, they have a target to reduce that number by 15% within the next 5 years. Now, what that is that would require policies like what Chloe's just described. My concern in that, Chewie, is if they're going to lose or reduce the number by 15% of young offenders in the next 5 years, how many of those young offenders today will be over 18 within that 5 years, hence the number being reduced purely by attrition? So we might look at that again tomorrow. We probably don't have time for that tonight. But what I was saying is when they release that data today and those information, it's like, yeah, well, okay, that'd be great. Reduce the number of young offenders. That involves fence at the top of the cliff. That involves, like Chloe just said, getting involved beforehand. That doesn't involve all of your policies, which are all stick policies. But it's probably fair we let the Right Honourable Brooke van Velden also speak to this gang shooting and what needs to be done around gangs.
We can just go watch a rugby game without the need to have to run for our lives and seek shelter somewhere because bullets are flying everywhere. What are you getting harder on crime?
Can I just say that is the worst framing for a question ever. The way he's made that question sound is like every weekend, gunshots, there's gun wars happening at rugby games, every single isolated incident between people who knew each other. Right, that's the first thing. But then again, also listen here, Brooke uses that famous phrase, they don't feel safe. Okay, so there was probably 5,000 rugby games happening in New Zealand over the weekend. And this horrific event happened at one of them. The other 4,999, you know what, Brooke, they felt safe. But this is what people do, the right does it in particular. They start to fearmonger. They start to use phrases like no one feels safe. And then their people pick it up. And then it echoes within the media. And then the journalists start talking about feeling safe to the other side. And it's all nonsense.
Is there more that your government needs to do?
I completely agree. I mean, it's scary. Rugby games are places for families where people should be able to take their kids and enjoy a spot of sport.
1950s.
I mean, everybody has been to a rugby game in New Zealand and walked away feeling either happy or sad for the team that's won or lost, but you don't expect to run away in fear that you're going to be shot at. That's unacceptable, and we should have no place for it. But I think this is also just the most recent example of crime that is affecting our community. I always talk to people
under your
who
government
say that they don't feel safe. They don't feel safe on the streets. They're not feeling safe when they're going around shopping mall areas. They don't feel safe now at rugby games. What I think we need to be clear on, though, is we don't have all of the facts.
They don't. So no one feels safe at rugby games. They don't feel safe. After this one isolated incident that happened at one rugby game in the year 2024. Now that's turned into they don't feel safe at rugby games.
Of this particular case and who particularly was involved. Yes, this government is going to be cracking down on crime. We have many policies to do this. Things like banning the gang insignia. to make sure that people aren't intimidated in public, getting harder on illegal firearms and making sure that we're cracking down on illegal firearms being in the community, because there is a place for people who use them safely. That is not at a rugby game, and we do need to do more work.
Oh, that's what it is, Chewy. They weren't aware. They weren't aware no firearms at the rugby because it didn't have a sign on the door. Now, this is finished, but I do, because obviously TV runs out of time, I do want to just play the end, which gives you Chloe's response to this as they're wrapping.
There, and I know Nicole McKee is the Associate Minister for Justice, has many policies in this area.
All right, Brooke, Chloe, thank you so much for your time. That's all we've got.
So much more that could be said. Thank you very much.
So much more. So much more. Brooke, thank you.
So, yes, obviously they could have gone a long way. Go for it.
I recognise that look from Chloe as Chloe is fellow neurodivergent, similar to me, is that thing of there's something so outrageous that's just been said and it's not your turn, so you need to sit there and take it. It's just outrageous. This is what a right-wing government wants. It's worked overseas. It fucking works here. Is just build that fear. Like this event that happened in the weekends is so out the gate, even for the gangs. Like it's just so out in the open. These guys are going to get caught by the end of the week. The police are already following strong lines of inquiry.
But hang on, Chewy.
The weapon that they used is already illegal.
No,
you know,
but Chewy,
like,
now people aren't safe. Now people feel they're not safe to go to rugby. Chewy, did you not hear? We just got told by a Minister of the Crown. Now people this weekend aren't going to attend any rugby games anywhere in the country because now people don't feel safe to attend the rugby, Chewy.
it's that extrapolation, right? Like even up in Auckland, and I don't want to belittle the things that happened up in Auckland and that with ram raiding and all of that sort of stuff. They always draw it out of like people in the community everywhere in New Zealand. Ordinary New Zealanders are scared. I'm not scared because I'm at the other end of the fucking country and we have different issues here. But it's that classic right wing, you know, we talk about the vibes that they're trying to build. And in this case, the vibe is society is broken and you should be scared. You should be scared, and we're the only people that can fix it. It's so classic. It's been repeated around the world. We're the only ones with the solution. It's stuff that we've done before and it's never worked. But this time, oh, I promise, you know, because you want to take your little kitty wink down to the mall or down to the rugby or all of that sort of stuff, and you just can't because black power's everywhere, as you know, in rural Southland. It's all vibes. It's no technicalities. Like she's talking about, oh, this wouldn't happen if we have a ban on gang patches. Well, then those guys would be down there with red hoodies or blue hoodies. You know, we've spoken about this at length. It's not going to change anything. I would be surprised if those guys were wearing gang patches and doing something this blatant because it's fucking stupid. And if they are, it's going to make them easier to catch. Just that. And I love the stumble into talking about illegal weapons. But, you know, some people are allowed guns. But, you know, like, we don't want to crack down on the guns too hard. You know, she almost caught herself with that one.
Yeah.
It's just foolish.